moment for God.
A moment with God can change everything. Listen, reflect, and be blessed. Here's today's scripture.
Okay, let's get into this. Our mission really is to unpack the context, the main message, and why they argue it's still so relevant for you listening right now.
And, there's this strong call to be watchful, vigilant even.
Okay.
But that's balanced or maybe intertwined with the absolute need to protect unity, community unity.
Mm-hmm.
And it all hinges on, sound teaching. The original teaching.
It's a very direct verse, isn't it? Now, I urge you, brothers and sisters, to watch out for those who create divisions and obstacles contrary to the teaching you have learned. Avoid them. It hits you immediately as, wow, quite strong.
Definitely strong language.
What specific worry was Paul voicing here right at the end of his letter?
This isn't some, generic warning tacked on.
Yeah.
It argues Paul's addressing a very specific potential threat he saw for the Roman believers.
Right.
These divisions and obstacles, the source says, they aren't just, personality clashes or minor disagreements.
Mm-hmm.
They're seen as actions and teachings that actually cut against the core gospel message they'd already learned, presumably from apostolic sources.
Okay, so undermining the foundation.
Exactly. And the source points out the strong verbs Paul uses, like create divisions. It suggests a deliberate, active effort, not just sort of passive disagreement.
So this isn't about squabbling over, say, secondary issues or different worship styles. It's really about things that fundamentally contradict the main message.
Precisely. It's focused squarely on influences, introducing ideas, contrary, that's the key word, contrary to the teaching you have learned.
Which the text understands
as the established apostolic gospel doctrine. The basics. Christ's death, resurrection, salvation through faith. Interesting is how Paul ties unity directly to holding on to that specific teaching.
So deviation is the source of the division.
In this reading, yes. That deviation causes the divisions and the stumbling blocks Paul warns about.
Okay, but then that command, avoid them. I mean, that sounds incredibly strong, exclusionary almost. How does the source interpret that part?
Yeah, it's a tough one. The source argues it's not meant as a sort of blanket instruction to just harshly judge or cut off anyone you disagree with on anything.
Okay, good.
Instead, it frames avoiding them more as a protective step. It's about safeguarding the community's spiritual health, its doctrinal soundness.
Protecting the group, then.
Right. The avoidance is aimed primarily at stopping the harmful influence of these contrary teachings from spreading around and potentially tripping people up, especially maybe newer believers.
So less about punishing the person, more about containing the teaching.
Less about emotional distance or social shunning, and more a conscious choice not to give a platform or legitimacy to teaching considered counter to the gospel, protecting the core message and the community built on it.
And this is where our source really brings it home for today, suggesting this isn't just ancient history. A call for spiritual discernment, maturity now.
Yeah, it argues believers can't just be passive consumers of information.
Right.
They need to be actively vigilant, evaluating teachings, evaluating influences against that standard, the gospel teaching they've received.
So how does one actually do that today? Cultivate that kind of discernment?
It starts with being really grounded in those foundational gospel truths yourself. Understand what was originally taught.
Knowing the baseline.
Exactly. And then developing that ability, that sensitivity to recognize when something, even if it sounds good, is actually pulling away from that core. It puts a level of responsibility on each person.
And thinking about today's world, I mean, the sheer volume of voices, online, books, different speakers.
Oh, absolutely.
Trying to navigate all that makes this ancient instruction feel incredibly relevant, challenging, but relevant.
And what the source ultimately comes back to is that it's about unity, but it's a specific kind of unity.
Okay.
A unity grounded in truth and love, anchored firmly in that specific gospel message Paul and the apostles taught. The avoidance part is seen as a tool, sometimes necessary, to protect that foundation and thus protect that true unity.
So wrapping this up, We've looked at this call to watch out in Romans 16.17, the importance of sticking to the original teaching learned, and this idea of avoiding as a protective measure against contrary influences.
Yeah, it really circles back to this idea that keeping a community healthy and unified means being, well, actively aware of the teachings floating around and checking if they actually line up with the core message. It's about unity through truth, anchored in the gospel.
Okay, so considering all that from our deep dive today, here's something for you to really think about. What does it mean for you in your own life, practically speaking, to actively exercise that discernment and guard against influences that contradict the core teaching you have learned?